What's going on, Niner fam? It is Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic Podcast, and I'm back from vacation. It was a lovely vacation. Me and the fam went on, drove all the way up to Kentucky, and saw the Noah's Ark exhibit, and did a whole bunch of things. We saw Dollywood. We saw the Stax Record Company Museum in Memphis. That was cool. There was a whole bunch of stuff that we did, but you're not here to hear about my family vacation. You're here to talk 49er football, and 49ers are in the middle of minicamp. But before we start talking about all the things that were said, all the things that happened while I was gone, let's get to the music.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'd like to know,
are you ready for start time?
And once again, it is Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic Podcast. Make sure you give the video a like. Make sure that you give it a subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell so you get the notifications for when I go live. And tell a friend to tell a friend so we can be friends every day, every week. 49ers mini camp, mandatory mini camp. Not mandatory for everybody, because a couple of people, it took them a little while to get there, but everybody ended up in the building except for a Mr. B.A., Brandon Ayuk, and we all know why that is. He's still waiting on a contract, but there was a lot of work being put in. I missed kind of OTAs and all that kind of stuff, but and a lot has been made. There's a lot of excitement around a couple of rookies in the 49er camp, and we just I was more I was more interested in the things that were said in the press conferences more than what I heard coming out of the mandatory minicamp, just because this isn't real. It's not real football, realistically speaking. It's, of course, we're going to get excited because we hear things about Ricky Pearsall. We hear things about certain Brock Purdy looking like a leader. And we hear all these things that don't really mean anything right now. But it was more about what was said in those press conferences and a couple of things. And I was on with my guy Beto and my guy Dion this Tuesday, a couple days ago. And we talked about a few things. But we're going to get into some things that I couldn't really flesh out because, I got two other people to think of when I'm on that show. But multiple coaches talking about really a whole bunch of things that were said that if you weren't paying attention, you may have missed, and you may not understand, because there's a lot of things that happen throughout the season that Shanny gives you nuggets of what he's going to do. These coaches tell you what they're thinking. These players tell you what's going on. You just got to listen. You got to pay attention. And more often than not, Shanny really kind of gives you what he's really thinking. He's a little too honest sometimes. But I think the most important news coming out of this span that I've been gone from you guys, was CMC re-signing for 2 more years. And really, what does this mean for BA's contract situation? Well, I mean, it freed up at least $7.5 million, and some people said 8, but cleared up cap space for the 49ers. That June 1st designation came through from the Eric Armstead release. So now the 49ers have the money. They have the money. They can bring him in. They can bring BA in. It's just about how much that's going to end up being. And we talked about it on our show, on the Boys podcast with Beto and Dion. We talked a little bit about, what it would take. And I'm really a firm believer that BA is going to need at least between 70 and 75 in guaranteed dollars. That's really what the sweet spot. I think it's going to be very similar to the Jalen Waddle contract, and not just that. I think he's going to need. I'm I'm going to say close to at least 45, between 45 and 50 up front. So it's going to be. I honestly think they're gonna front load his deal so that it's gonna his deal is going to end up being a deal later down the road. But I think the deal is going to get done, and I see a lot of people waffling. This happens every single season, and I don't understand it. But and they could be right. Honestly, they could be right. And oh, my guy David McNiner in the house. Want to say what's up to him. He said, what's good, David?" Like, make sure that you check out him and Mr. Brian Culp on their channel. They do great work over there. They have a really good show, like a lot of heart in that show. So make sure you check my guys out. Give them a follow on Twitter. Niners Lounge in the house. Appreciate you coming through, fam. Mayoko is pushing the fifth year option. Thoughts? And that's what we're talking about right now. I honestly think, and he could be right. He could be right. But you know what? There was a whole bunch of things being said during the Debo contract situation. Mayako was saying stuff then. They all were, that they didn't know if it was going to get done. There was all kinds of trade speculation. Even with the Bosa stuff, they're so far apart. Like, who knows if that's going to get done? Now, it might get done later than sooner. Let's put it that way. But I still think it's going to get done. The 49ers always play hardball because they want to get the best structure so that they can continue to make maneuvers throughout the tenure of the contract. And I think that's a super important part. And people just want the deal done. Fans just want the deal done. We just want to hear he's in training camp and he's working with the team so that we don't have any slow starts, all that kind of stuff. That's what fans want. And I'm a fan. I want him in. I want him in there. It would be great if we could have him in there doing all those things. But at the same time, I think it's really pertinent, like, that you have to look at the history of 49ers signing their major free agents and the fact that they're not going to give in. You can want what you want. Debo wanted what he wanted. Bosa wanted what he wanted. It's not going to get harder than the Bosa deal. There is no possible way it's going to get harder than the Bosa deal. So I think it's just hammering out details and what Brandon wants. It's got to be the guarantees. And does BA deserve his money? Of course he deserves his money. All these guys deserve their money. But it's all about the structure of the deal and how the 49ers can make it so that they can continue to add talent. They're about to have to pay Purdy. They have to give themselves flexibility. They just do. They've got Debo on the deal. A lot of people think that Debo his days are numbered with this organization, thinking that next year they're probably going to move off of his deal. That's why they need flexibility in the deal. So it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And we as fans have to be patient. This team has done nothing but give us reason to trust that they're going to bring in that major free agent. They've done nothing. But let's say that they don't. What's the worst thing that could happen if they don't? You still got Debo. You got Ricky. You got the Ricky Pearsall. You've got Jacob Cowing. You've got Conley. You've got who else? You got Jawan Jennings, third and Jawan. They made that big signing. To me, that was a big signing. And we didn't talk much about that signing on me and Beto's show and Dion. But that was a huge signing, in my opinion, because I know it just gave him an extra year. But at the same time, it spoke to – that was another culture signing. And another signing that shows the rest of the guys on the team, if you show up and show out, if you are a part of this culture, if you are a person that that does things the right way in their Niner way, like we're gonna reward you. I don't know how many teams are going to extend a large amount of money to Juwan Jennings. Not that they paid him a ton of money, but the fact that they gave him another year, the fact that because he is a very specific skill set that I don't know that a lot of teams want or need or even think about having on their squad. Now, he works absolutely in the 49ers system, but I can't guarantee that he would be that way on the Chiefs, on really any other squad. But Niners Lounge says we riot. But I look at this. What if they don't? I would be upset. I'll be honest. I would be upset. I think that Ayuk is the key to Brock Purdy's future. That's my personal opinion. I think that he is the only one on the squad currently that is continuously asked to be that X wide receiver that goes up again. He's never motioned around. He's never given a favorable matchup. He consistently just has to beat whoever is in front of him, press man, zone, regular man. Well, it doesn't matter. He's just got to do what he's got to do to get open. And more often than not, he gets open with great separation. He's one of the best in the league at it. And so in my mind, he is the key to Brock Purdy's future. Because then you can stick anybody on that other side and they're gonna benefit from that. So, but at the same time, if they don't, let's say that they don't, there's tons of talent on this squad still. You've got tight ends, you've got running backs, you've got wide receivers even that I think could not take BA's place, but Shanny can scheme them open. People forget that this team got similar numbers, similar passing numbers that they did last year, and not as good. The efficiency wasn't as good, but the same thing. They got similar numbers with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, with Kendrick Bourne at wide receiver, as like really the best receiver. Dante Pettis couldn't even make it through the season. You had Emmanuel Sanders that they got in the middle of the season. Rookie Debo that hadn't been wide back yet. And we didn't see any of that. Not that he had a bad rookie year, but he had a pretty decent rookie year. But it wasn't on that level. And George Kittle and the running backs were not CMC, not one of them. So it was much less talent. So I think that they could survive, and I still think they'd win a lot of games. But for the future of Brock Purdy, I think that it's very key that they get Brandon Ayuk in house. They could lose Debo, in my opinion. They could lose Debo. They cannot lose Brandon Ayuk for Purdy's development. Like that's all. But if they do get him, I think that it sets Purdy up for years and years to come. That those two are going to be together for probably the next 5-6 years, probably 5 or 6 years, and they could build around that duo for the foreseeable future. They don't need to get a ton more. So, in my opinion, I think they're going to sign him. I don't think that it's going to be. I know people are getting nervous, but I think that it's going to work out fine. Just breathe. I keep telling 49er fans, just breathe. I don't think that they opened up that cap space for no reason. We just got to wait. It never happens until training camp, so just be patient. But all right, now that the BA stuff is out of the way, let's talk about the some of the coach speak that was going on, and there was a couple of things. The first thing I want to talk about is Coach Forster getting out there and talking about the O line. And you know that if anybody is watching my show, has watched my show, they know that I am very critical of the 49ers, uh, the way that they look at the offensive line. I've What's funny is that when Shanny and Lynch first took over, they said that you invest in the trenches. Okay, well, the trenches they don't just end on the defensive line. The trenches, if you would invest in the offensive line, and they did invest in the beginning, they tried to bring people in to upgrade that offensive line multiple times by signing Richburg. Like they like traded people. They brought Trent Williams in eventually. They did all kinds of. They had Joe Staley. They tried to upgrade the center position in Richburg. Um, they did all. They what's it called? Drafted McGlinchey. They did all these things to upgrade the offensive line. But then at some point, they just stopped caring. They just stopped caring, and they thought, and they're under the impression, and Forster confirmed it finally. They confirmed it that the 49ers don't care about using their picks on offensive linemen, about using top picks. They think that you can get serviceable offensive linemen in those later rounds, which, not saying that that's not real, but when you're passing up premium talent, to get a quote unquote smarter player that just won't make as many mistakes in the beginning, I think that's silly. This is football. You're overthinking it. Trent Williams was drafted in the first round, but you have him on the team now. Would he have been good as a rookie? He would have absolutely been good as a rookie in this offense. You have to bring, in my opinion, you have to bring those guys in and just start coaching them up, bringing them up in the culture that is the 49ers. And so it's disingenuous when you sit there and say that there's nobody that they're even looking at in those rounds. Like, that's just silliness. And they're going to it may not be now, it may not be next season. It's going to happen to where it's going to be painfully obvious that is a deficiency. Because this offensive line, not that it's bad. It's not bad. It's serviceable, which gets you through the regular season until you go up against some of those beefier offensive or beefier defensive lines and those better teams. When you go up against the Baltimores, when you go up against Cleveland's defensive line, when you go up against these better defenses, even against Detroit, and when they went up against KC, it's when you go up against these better teams and you have to have it. You've got to want more talent. Because here's the thing. It's great that they're smart. It's great that they're in the right position. I understand that you just want them to be in the right spot at the right time. But everybody makes mistakes. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Everyone. The great Trent Williams made quite a few mistakes in the Super Bowl. But you know what? But guess what happens if you have talent? Sometimes your talent can make up for those mistakes. And you're not bringing in people that have the talent. So if they mess up, there is nothing to make up to disguise those mistakes. They can't adjust. And they're just getting run over. Cough, cough, McKivitz. Cough, cough, Burford. Even sometimes cough, cough, Brendel. Even sometimes cough, cough, Aaron Banks. Everybody but Trent Williams makes mistakes on that line. And even Trent Williams makes mistakes sometimes, which is even more reason why you need talent to fortify that offensive line. Nobody's going to be perfect. You have to have something that, in my mind, that you can. And this is all my opinion, but I'm not. Obviously, they've gotten by. They've gotten to the Super Bowl. They've gotten to 4 out of the last five NFC Championship games. But at the same time, you haven't gotten over the hump. And as much as you improve the roster, and as much as you improve this, that, and the third, and put new bells and whistles in every single year, you haven't been able to get over the hump. So you have to find the areas where you're weakest at and try to build upon those. And I feel like that's the one area where they just refuse to try and get better at. But I'm going to get to some of these comments, and appreciate you, Niners Lounge. And he says it has been Chris Jones kills us inside. And it's good players. It's not just Chris Jones. We got exposed against Cleveland. We got really exposed against Cleveland. Whenever we were missing Trent Williams, those 3 games that we were missing him, it was painfully obvious where our offensive line was. We were incapable. People think it was because of Debo. We were missing Debo. That's not the reason why we struggled. We struggled because we couldn't block anybody. We couldn't run the ball. So if you can't run the ball because your offensive line is trash, and Trent Williams masks a lot for that offensive line, they continuously run to the left. I mean, at some point you want to run the ball to the right. You can't just put it on Trent Williams every single time. So it is what it is. It's frustrating to hear Forster out there making excuses and saying that this is basically their philosophy, that it's okay. Hey, it's okay. There's a line. There's a line. There's a line that as long as they're above that line, it's serviceable. Okay, that's fine in the regular season against regular season teams. But when you get in the playoffs and you're good, every team is good. Every team is good at that point. It's going to show up. And we got lucky a couple of times, which, hey, that's football. That's the way the ball bounces. At a certain point, you can't really say it's luck because I mean, 4 out of 5 NFC Championship games and 2 Super Bowls, getting to 2 Super Bowls, is you can't really say it's luck. But at the same time, it was very close. It was very close. It could have gone either way. And it definitely wasn't a foregone conclusion. So you would like to make it a little bit more definitive, let's say. And I don't know what that is. Oh, but it's on Twitch, so I'm not touching it. But I just so the Forster comments really kind of let at least at the very least, it was nice to hear. The one good part about hearing Forster talk was that at least we don't have anything to think about once the draft hits next year. We don't have to worry about it. We know that they're not going to. We know that they're not going to draft anybody in those first couple of rounds at the offensive line spot or at the tackle spot. We know they're not going to do it. I mean, that's basically what they're telling us. So we don't have to worry about even scouting those people because they're not going to draft any of those people. All the while, some of the guys that were out there are fighting for starting spots on their prospective teams. A lot of those guys that were drafted, those tackles that were drafted before or even after 31, are vying for starting spots on other teams. And you can't tell me that none of those guys could beat out McKivitz. I'll be. Let's keep it 100. So, but I'm gonna come off of my soapbox for a minute. Let's talk about Nick Sorensen for a little bit. I really like Nick Sorensen because he's like the defensive. He's almost like the defensive version of Shanny. in that he's honest and he's almost too honest. But he just kind of says it the way he feels it. And I love the fact that the players are talking about him like, and they keep referring back to D'Amico, and they're so excited. The one constant that I heard from all the defensive players that talked over this past week, and I thought it was a very key point to make, is that they all talked about going back to the D'Amico style of defense, and which we all, and I'm not going to call out this guy's name. I want to so bad, but but there was a lot of people that called some of us crazy for saying that Wilkes was not a good fit early on last season. Early on. And it was obvious. And they tried to make it, there was a lot of guys out there that tried to say, oh, well, the percentages, the stats, they call the same amount of zone plays, same amount of this, same amount of that. Like it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. And the players right now, when you listen to them talk, they are confirming that to you. They are excited about going to the back to the D'Amico style. So listen. You've got to listen to the players sometimes. They were making excuses when they were asked questions. You could hear it in their voices. They weren't happy. Shanahan wasn't happy. And it was different. That's fine. It's not saying, it doesn't mean Wilkes is a bad coach. It means that he wasn't a good fit for what the 49ers do, which I think a lot of people, there were some people out there that said it was going to be a bad fit, and kudos to them because they called it early. But I was one of the people that in the beginning, by the third game, I was ready. I was done. I knew it was different, and I knew it was. And you can go back and look at the shows, and I talked about it multiple times. It's not that he's a bad coach. It's just that his system didn't fit with what the 49er football it really is. And I'm so excited for Nick Sorensen. And a lot of people are being a little. They think it's I think if people go back and remember what it was like when D'Amico first took over from Saleh, everybody was a little, oh well, we don't know. This is his first time being a coordinator. We don't know what it's going to be, and it was different from Saleh, and there were some growing pains. But once he got dialed in, it was magic. That defense was magic, and I think that Nick Sorensen has more to work with than D'Amico did. I'll be honest with you. Even though there's different players along the defensive line, I think that this defensive line is the defensive end specifically are sneaky deep. And I think that they're going to slide a few of them on the inside quite a few times to keep those that defensive interior fresh. But I think that this team is going to be deep along the offensive line or the defensive line. I think that this is the best secondary that they've had. If they can stay healthy for the beginning of the season, I think that it's crazy that every single season we look at this and we think that this team is a little bit better. Well, I think they're a little bit better. That it's just going to look different. I think that they're with bringing Brandon Staley in and his his focus being more on the defensive secondary. I think that was a big reason for bringing Brandon Staley in. Was I think that they brought Wilkes in for what he does with defensive backs, but I think that they didn't want him to completely change what they did. What they do, they just wanted him to fix the secondary. And if he could call the game the same way as D'Amico, but it didn't work out that way. He just wasn't willing to do that. And now you bring in a Nick Sorensen, who's going to probably call the game more close to what D'Amico does. And then, because that's his philosophy, that's what he's used to. And then, but you have Brandon Staley there to work with the DBs. And I think that that is kind of a perfect marriage. I think that that's really what they were going for with bringing Brandon Staley in. I don't think that people are looking at it that way. I still think that they think Brandon Staley is something to do with the actual defensive game plan, and I don't think it's as much of a game plan thing. I think it's more about him working with those DBs, disguising those coverages, that kind of stuff that they wanted Wilkes here for, but he wasn't a good fit. So it's better to have Nick Sorensen calling plays and being in there with this defensive line and this defensive linebackers. They want to get more fly to the ball like they were with D'Amico, but you still have Brandon Staley there working with the DBs. And honestly, this is the most talent this defensive backfield has had. They are stacked back there. There is a ton of depth in that defensive backfield, whether we want to recognize it or not. And I think people are nervous about Hufanga coming back full speed and all the other stuff, but I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be fine. I'm positive. I'm going to be positive about it until I'm not. But yeah, I love Nick Sorensen's demeanor, and I think that the way that the players talk about him, I think that only means good things for this defense. I think that people are going to get excited. I think 49er fans are going to be excited about having their defense back. The old defense of flying to the ball, multiple guys flying to the ball instead of leaving guys on islands and missing one tackle and then them being able to run 4 or 5 yards. I think the run game, the run defense is going to be shored up. Eric Armstead is not going to be as big of an issue, I think, as we think. But and it's nothing against Eric Armstead, but people forget they had a really good run defense even when he was out. So you can't get caught up in the sauce. But the next one I want to talk about, Hufanga. Hufanga had a interview and he talked about his recovery, possibly being back week 1. And I mean, that makes me nervous a little bit when he says that he possibly could be back week 1. He's working towards week 1. I think he said that he's going to be training really, like when training camp hits, he's going to be able to, they're going to try and ease him in, and he's possibly will be ready for week 1. I think that they're going to be okay. There's a lot of safeties out there that if they need to go get one, they can still go out and get one that can spell them one game. But I will say this, Hufanga better be careful because Jimmy Ward, the same thing happened to Jimmy Ward, and then they found somebody randomly that just ended up taking the spot, and then Jimmy Ward ended up being a nickel. Not that I think that's going to happen to Hufanga because he's a completely different player, and he's young, and I think he's a really good player. But the 49ers have shown over and over again, if it's not broke, they're not going to fix it. So if something is working, they're not going to just pull it because another guy's ready. If it looks really good, there's a chance that Hufanga may have to wait till his spot comes back up. And not that I think that that's going to happen. I don't. I think that we missed Hufanga last year. I really think that they missed him, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be great to have him back. His leadership, his tenacity, like just the instincts. I think he can only be better for Jair Brown. Everybody talked about his communication out there on the back end. And it was. So I think that he can only be better. He can only make Jair Brown better. And he spoke glowing words of Jair Brown. I heard a lot of people out there talking about, we haven't heard anything about Jair Brown. He said glowing remarks about Jair Brown and the work that he's putting in. So he thinks that he's going to be great. He also said a lot of good things about Malik Mustafa, which made me almost think that they're gonna turn him into that quasi linebacker or that three safety look, and they're talking about he's just a ball of muscle. and I'm really interested to see that guy on the field. I just want to see what it looks like when we get into training camp. We haven't really seen too much. We really haven't seen too much of anything. I'll be honest. There wasn't really a lot of video, but this year. But Hafanga, and I thought it was an interesting. But I did think that it was an interesting comment that he made that he didn't even want to guarantee that he was the starter coming into Week 1. He said that he's going to act like he's competing. He made the comment multiple times that he's competing. And it makes you wonder, did Kyle even mention something like that? They said, hey, don't think that it's just a given you're going to be the starter. If we've got a guy that's playing really well, you've got to play into that spot. We're not going to just remember what they did to Brock last year. They brought in Sam Darnold. They told Sam Darnold that he had a chance to play, and they were even talking to Tom Brady. This team has shown you over and over again that they don't have a problem. They don't sit on their laurels. If whoever is playing the best is who's going to play. So, but then we've got Mr. Fred Warner was talking to the media as well, and I thought this was another interesting comment. I heard him talking about his body and how, and they asked him, why he's always at the facility. Every single time that they do video, he's always at the facility, and he spoke on it. This is the first time I actually heard him talk about why he's always there at the facility, and he trusts this training staff to keep his body right. He trusts the training staff to keep him from getting injured. And you can't really ignore the results. I wish more of his teammates would stay in the facility if those are the results, because Warner doesn't really miss games. Very few and far between. So, but he talked about his boxing, and they asked him a question about why he does that, and that's another part of it. It gives you some agility, gives you stamina. I thought it was a great interview, and Fred's always good for good sound bites, and talked about getting scrappy with the offense and early on, and he loves the fight. I can't wait to see him get in, because he's going to lay out some receiver. Some receiver is going to get made an example out of in training camp. It's going to happen. Fred is the irritant that loves to get in there and start to mix it up, and to make that, he wants to make that competition, those competitive juices, he wants to get them flowing, and I think it's going to be hot and heavy this off season. But I wanted to talk about. Oh, I wanted to talk about another thing, and if this this show today, we had a really good show with Beto and Dion, and we talked a lot about quarterback play. Got into it with Dion about is Kirk Cousins. He called Kirk Cousins trash. I don't want to put words in his mouth. He called him trash. I disagree. I think that given the right situation, any quarterback has the right skill set in today's league. I don't think today's league is not about, is this quarterback this, that, or the third. It's about, do they fit in the scheme? Do they fit in the scheme? Do they fit with the personnel around them? And it has to be a fit. That's really today's NFL. What today's NFL is all about. I look at a guy like Josh Allen. If they would just commit to the run game and take some of the load off of him, it's not that they can't, because when they do run the ball, they run it for over a 5.5 yard clip. Look it up. But they just don't run the ball, and they think that along the way, when Mr. Brady came in, he convinced teams that if you're a good enough quarterback, you can throw the ball 50 times, and that can just be an extension of the run game. I'm here to tell you that that's not accurate. Brady is a one-off. And at some point, teams need to figure that part out. If you're looking for a Brady, it's it's an exercise in futility to look for a Brady. That's not it's a unicorn. It's not going to happen. But because of that, because we saw it, teams think that they can duplicate it. And I think that if you put Josh Allen on another team, like a Rams, like I would say even a Baltimore or something like that, and I know that might rub some people the wrong way with the Lamar crowd, but you give him a running game, and I think that guy could be unstoppable. Uh, that's just my personal opinion. There is a lot of quarterbacks out there that just need they're one facet of the game away. There's a lot of quarterbacks. I think Kirk Cousins has never had a defense. Like I don't think he's ever had a top 10 defense he's played with. So we can talk about Brock looks great. He's putting up points, making up historical numbers, but just think about how many games they probably may not have won if they didn't have the defense holding teams to 15 points a game. Just think about that for a minute. And would we be calling Brock as good as he is if they didn't? Probably not. Probably not. What some of us would be saying, well, look at the numbers, but some of us would be saying, look at the numbers. Like he is playing really well. He just can't get us over the hump. And things like that would have been said. And that's all stuff that is yesteryear football. That was when I was coming up type of football, when they were asking quarterbacks to really do everything and make magic happen. That's not today's football. You've got Patrick Mahomes that can do that, and that's it. Everybody else needs help. Everybody else needs some kind of help. So if that's what you're waiting for, what you should be doing as an organization is trying to make your team as solid as possible, try to make your team fit together. Like if they're not as stable of a quarterback, you better have an offensive line to protect him. But I thought it was a very interesting podcast I was listening to today. Web Zone, 49ers Web Zone. Shout out to my guys, Al Sacco and Brian Rennick today. And I was in their chat hot and heavy, and shout outs to them for giving me a shout out during their show. But, they talked about what Shanny has to do to take the next step offensively in this offense. And we're just talking about the quarterback situation with as far as Brock goes. It's weird. It's weird because I don't think that I have a different opinion on it than a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that Shanny needs to get more creative in his offense. And that's what bogs them down in the playoffs. And I said it on Twitter earlier today. I don't feel like that's the problem for Shanny. I don't think it's creativity. I think that there's too much creativity. I think that there is, at a certain point, we're not playing football anymore. We're playing, I feel like he's playing Madden out there. And he's just trying to find the glitch in the game. When how everybody knows that they can just run out of the pocket and wait for their guy to get open. And like, it's that kind of stuff. And you motion your guy against this and the computer, it just automatically has to do this. That's not real football all the time. And now when it works, it's great. It looks great. It looks phenomenal. The 49ers are going to put up a ton of numbers. They're going to get wins this season. They're going to make the playoffs, barring injuries. They're going to do well this season. But when they get up against those better teams, it's always glaringly obvious that you can't do that all the time. And sometimes it's better. It's better. I think the next step for Shanny is to simplify what he does. I think he needs to simplify it. I think he needs to uh, throw in just a quick out. I think he needs to improve his drop back game, give his quarterback more outs, more hot reads, more leeway to motion guys open and call their own hot routes. I think that there's just simple things that they can do, basically giving the reins, giving some of the power over to Brock. I really what it is. So because we all talk about all last season how much Shanny trusts Brock. Does he? Does he? Brandon Ayuk. When was the last time you saw Brandon Ayuk motioned? Ever. He never gets motioned open. With Shanny, you run the play. You run the play. The play, there is an answer in every single play. That's what Shanny says. Every play has an answer. The answer's in there. But when the answer's not in there, how about giving your quarterback the leeway to motion a guy and get him a better matchup? How about that? That's where the next step for the 49ers is. The 49ers are known as a running team. 49ers are known as a running team that and they're built off of the running game and play action. That's what they're known as. They're a physical brand of a physical team. But last year they were more of a finesse team, in my opinion. They were more of a finesse team, but they were trying to be finesse, but it was also they were still trying to toe the line, in my opinion. I think that the next step is they go all the way. If Brock is your guy, then you need to give him the leeway to make the plays and to make the calls and to make a decision in the moment that, hey, this probably isn't going to work if I don't motion this guy over here and get him a better matchup. And I think Brock can do it. I think he's capable. I think that you have to feed into and give him confidence. I think you have to let him do it. And I mean, what's the worst that could happen? So, but kudos to those guys for bringing up the conversation. I love it. I love the conversation. And it's just, to me, it's just silly. It's silly that we're still talking about, we talk about Shanny being this offensive genius, and it's an offensive genius only in certain situations. When he goes up against better teams, they say he gets tight. I don't think that he gets tight. I think that he calls the same razzle dazzle plays, and against those better teams, they're not falling for it. They know exactly what part of the field he wants to attack, and they're covering up that part of the field. And then we're going to talk about the offensive line, because when that gets covered up, what happens, because you don't have an offensive line that can protect. You have smart guys. You got guys just above that line that Forrester was talking about. And then it's a nightmare, because Brock's I don't even think he's been allowed to call his own protections. So you're leaving that up to the center. That's another thing. That's another aspect that we're talking about, where Shanny is going to have to give up some of the control and let Brock take a hold of this team. We talked about him looking more of like a leader. That's what all the content creators, beat writers have been talking about. Is he looks like he's the bona fide leader of the team. Okay, well, that's part of being the leader, allowing him to take a hold of that offense and becoming the actual leader of that offense, and let him make you look good. How good does Patrick Mahomes make Andy Reid look? Andy Reid was always known as a good offensive coach, but he wasn't known as a mastermind until Pat Mahomes came in. Now he's a mastermind. Now he's a genius. Now he comes up with every time he comes up with the trick play, and it only works because he's got Pat Mahomes. Like we sit there and we say, "Oh my God, he's such a genius." Shanny, come on, let Brock make you look good. I want to call you a genius. I want to say, man, we got the smartest coach. Shanny's gonna dial it up every single time, and most of the time we do say that. But I I want to say it about my coach, but the last couple of years in the playoffs, it's gotten tight. It gets tight, and before we used to blame it on Jimmy, but it's not Jimmy. It's not Jimmy. It's the plays being called in those situations, and the inability, the rigidness of the play calling, the inability to make adjustments before the snap. Like, it's fine that you call the play. Let your quarterback make adjustments if he sees it's not there. Because I think Brock is smart enough to do that. But with that being said, I'm going to get out of here today. Make sure that you tune in. Make sure that you tune in to next week, next Tuesday. Young Heavy from Sports After Dark is going to be on Meet with me, Beto, and Brandon next Tuesday. Make sure you check in for that show, and make sure that you give my guy Young Heavy and Ashley Baker and my guy Silu over there dropped from Drop Balls Pod. Make sure that you give them a sub, and make sure that you follow my guys on Twitter. Like they're all good people, great content. They've been doing great things ever since Sports and Coffee. So for all of our Twitter people out there, but make sure you tune into that one. That one's going to be a really good show. And then I'll be back next week with tomorrow. I am going to be with who am I going to be on with? I'm going to be on with 49er Minded. Bashar. We're supposed to go talk. I'm supposed to have a conversation with him tomorrow on his show. So make sure you check out him. We're probably going to be on around 6 p.m. Pacific time. And so make sure you check in for that as well. And with that being said, make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend so we can be friends every day, every week. Make sure you give the video a like. Make sure that you give it a subscribe. Make sure that you give me some likes so that we can adjust this algorithm and my show can show up every single time you turn on YouTube. I would love that personally. And then we're on, because I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I am on Facebook, I'm on Twitch now, and I'm gonna make sure I figure out how this playback stuff works. I've made myself a room, so go ahead and add yourself to my room on playback too. Eventually, I'm gonna figure that out, and we're gonna get that going as well. So, with all that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. I will see you guys tomorrow. If you guys turn into 49er Minded Show, make sure you check us out tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And but yeah, thank you guys for letting me have a vacation and not leaving me all alone on my show. I appreciate you guys. But with that being said, I'm going to get out of here. As always, go Niners.